It was a gloomy morning in Cedar Hollow, a small town tucked away in the forests of New Hampshire. A steady drizzle fell from the overcast sky, soaking the ground and making the air feel damp and cold. Will Turner, the town's only gravedigger, stood alone in the local cemetery, sweeping fallen leaves from the paths between headstones. At 58, Will had grown used to the quiet here, with only the occasional bird or gust of wind breaking the silence. But today, something was off. The sound of barking pierced the stillness, catching Will's attention. He looked up, surprised to see a dog sitting by a gravestone about 50 feet away. It was a scruffy black and white dog, medium-sized, with its head held high and barking steadily toward the grave. Will frowned, his curiosity piqued. The dog didn't seem like a stray, but it wasn't acting right either. Slowly, Will approached. "Hey, pup, what's going on?" he called out softly as he got closer. The dog stopped barking for a moment, turning its head to stare directly at him. Its eyes were intense, almost pleading, like it was trying to tell him something. Will hesitated for a second, feeling uneasy, but then he noticed the name on the headstone. Margaret Collins, 1934-2007. Will felt a shiver run down his spine. Margaret had passed away over 15 years ago. She had been a beloved figure in Cedar Hollow, always helping others and volunteering at the church. But her death had been surrounded by whispers. An accident, people had said, but the details never quite added up. Will took another step closer and suddenly realized something alarming. The earth in front of Margaret's grave looked disturbed. The dirt was uneven, freshly turned, as if someone had been digging. His heart skipped a beat. Will immediately pulled out his phone and called the local police. "Sheriff Bell, you need to come down here," he said, his voice tense. "Something's not right at Margaret Collins's grave." Sheriff Bell, a no-nonsense woman with over 20 years of experience, arrived with her deputy, Mike, not long after. The dog, still lingering near the grave, barked again as they approached, but this time it sounded more urgent. "What do we have, Will?" Sheriff Bell asked, eyeing the disturbed soil. "That dog's been sitting here barking at the grave," Will explained. "And I noticed the dirt's been messed with. It doesn't look natural. I figured I should call you before touching anything." Bell nodded, crouching to inspect the ground. "Good call." She turned to Mike. "Grab some gloves. Let's see what we're dealing with." Mike grabbed a shovel from the truck and started digging carefully. Will watched, anxiety bubbling in his chest. The dog, now sitting silently by the grave, watched too, as if waiting for something to be uncovered. As Mike dug, the scent of fresh earth mixed with something more foul, a smell that sent a jolt of unease through the small group. After several minutes, Mike's shovel hit something solid. He stopped and carefully cleared more dirt until the shape of a small wooden box emerged. "It's a box," Mike muttered, his voice tight with nerves. Sheriff Bell crouched down and helped Mike pull it out. The box was old and weathered, clearly not part of any official burial. Bell's face tightened as she opened the lid. Inside, wrapped in layers of cloth, was a bundle of old letters and photographs, along with a small, rusted key. But the most disturbing part was what lay underneath, a human skull, clearly decades old, buried in this unmarked box.
"Jesus," Bell whispered. "This isn't just some random grave robbing." Will took a step back, his stomach churning. "Who would do something like this? And why?" "I don't know," Bell answered, her eyes fixed on the skull. "But it looks like this goes deeper than we thought."
The dog, having stayed silent while they dug, let out a low growl. It wasn't aggressive, more like it was warning them. Bell glanced at the dog, then back at the grave. "I've seen this dog before," she said, her voice low. "That's Margaret's old dog, Buddy." He disappeared not long after she died. But that's impossible, Will said, shaking his head. That dog would be long gone by now. Maybe, Belle replied, standing up. But if it's the same dog, he's been guarding this spot for a reason. Over the next few hours, Belle and Mike continued to investigate the area, documenting the evidence. The discovery of the skull shook the town to its core, and rumors started flying about who the remains could belong to and why they had been buried near Margaret's grave. As the investigation deepened, Belle began piecing together fragments of the town's history that had long been forgotten. The letters from the box revealed a darker side to Margaret's past, one that no one had ever spoken of. It turned out she had been involved in a scandal years ago, a secret affair with a married man. When the man's wife disappeared, people suspected foul play, but no evidence ever surfaced, until now. Buddy, the dog, had stayed by Margaret's side until her death, and it seemed he had stayed by her grave to protect her secret, even after she was gone. The skull they found was identified as the missing woman, the wife of the man Margaret had been involved with. It appeared that Margaret had taken the secret to her grave, quite literally, burying the evidence close by. As the truth came out, the townspeople were left reeling. Margaret, once seen as a saintly figure, was now remembered in a much more complicated light. Sheriff Bell ensured that justice was finally served, even if it was years too late. And Buddy? He remained at the cemetery, sitting vigil by Margaret's grave, as if waiting for something or someone. One evening, after the investigation had wrapped up and life in Cedar Hollow had started to return to normal, Will came by the cemetery to check on things. He spotted Buddy lying peacefully by Margaret's headstone. For the first time in weeks, the dog looked calm, at rest. Will bent down, scratched the dog's head, and whispered, "Good boy." The next morning, Buddy was gone, never seen again. Some said the dog had finally found peace, his last duty fulfilled. Others believed Buddy had been waiting all along for the truth to be uncovered, and now that it was, he could finally rest. Whatever the case, the story of Buddy and Margaret Collins became legend in Cedar Hollow, a tale of secrets, loyalty, and the strange ways the past has of coming back to the surface.